The one and only former president to live to the age of 100 has passed away. Jimmy Carter, former peanut farmer, naval officer, and 39th president of the United States, died on Sunday in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. Carter won the presidency in 1976, defeating Republican President Gerald Ford. He faced a number of challenges during his time as commander-in-chief, including skyrocketing inflation and the Iran hostage crisis after students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November of 1979. His achievements included Middle East peace between Israel and Egypt, known as the Camp David Accords, and the Panama Canal Treaty, although that isn't looking so good currently. In his post-presidential years, Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind spent time building houses with Habitat for Humanity. Joe Biden responded to the news, posting this on Sunday night, quote, "Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by deeds. Just look at his life's work. With his compassion and moral clarity, he lifted people up and changed lives and saved lives all over the globe." Another former president, Democrat Barack Obama, posted this on X. "President Carter taught us all what it means to live a life of grace, dignity, justice, and service." And Donald Trump posted this on Truth Social, quote, "While I strongly disagree with him philosophically and politically, I also realize that he truly loved and respected our country and all it stands for. He worked hard to make America a better place, and for that, I give him my highest respect." Jimmy Carter died peacefully at his home, surrounded by his family. Before we go, let's talk with Victory News contributor Tim Barton one last time today. Tim, the 39th president of the United States, Jimmy Carter, passed away yesterday at the age of 100. How will President Carter, you believe, be remembered?
Well, I think it depends on who's telling the story, because certainly with a lot of the mainstream media, they're highlighting how great he was because he was a very kind, good-hearted man. He loved Jesus. He loved people. He was a good man. He was a terrible leader and a terrible president. Two things can be true at once. You can be a good person and not necessarily a good leader. And that's really the legacy of his presidency. He failed in so many areas, of course, as identified with the skyrocketing inflation crisis, but then you had the energy crisis, you had the Iranian hostage crisis when the Soviet Union was invading Afghanistan, and he decides to politically posture by saying in 1980 that our Olympians can't go compete in Moscow. So much of what he did, there was a failure of leadership from what he did, but he was a good-hearted person. And so I think President Trump's recollection on Truth is probably the best assessment that I've seen so far.
Right, Greg, President-elect Donald Trump has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to delay an upcoming ban of the TikTok app until after he assumes office so he can seek a political resolution. The BBC reports Trump's lawyers filed a legal brief Friday with SCOTUS stating this: Trump opposes banning TikTok and seeks the ability to resolve the issues at hand through political means once he takes office. The Supreme Court is slated to hear arguments on January 10th on a U.S. law requiring TikTok owner ByteDance to sell the social media company to an American firm or face a ban by January 19th. U.S. lawmakers accuse ByteDance of being linked to the Chinese government, which the company denies. Nearly 24 state attorneys general have pled with the Supreme Court to compel ByteDance and TikTok to divest or be banned from the United States. Once again, let's talk with wallbuilders.com President Tim Barton. Tim, Donald Trump seeking to get involved in this TikTok ban. This seems like an unprecedented move. How do you think the Supreme Court's going to respond to this?
Well, I do think it's unprecedented, but maybe not unexpected coming from President Trump, that he wants to be a part of negotiating any deal there could be, especially if he thinks it might favor America, and maybe because it involves China as well. I think it's not unreasonable to think that the U.S. Supreme Court, because they are people and they do feel pressure, President Trump has the leverage for a lot of pressure that can be felt by those justices. And nobody wants President Trump's wrath coming against them. And so I think it's very likely they could be influenced, but I think there's a lot of principled people there. And so I don't know necessarily that he's going to be able to win this out, especially since this was a law that was authored by Congress and signed by the president. So I don't see the Supreme Court necessarily going a different direction. But if they did, I could maybe understand why with some of the pressure that President Trump might be putting on them.
All right, now let me ask you this. According to a Politico report from earlier this year, from March, in fact, Trump's former campaign manager in his earlier race, Kellyanne Conway, was and perhaps is being paid by the Club for Growth to advocate for TikTok. Do you think the president-elect could possibly be letting that impact how he views this case?
Well, it's very interesting. The idea of somebody advocating for TikTok is certainly unusual. In my mind, given the fact that we know that TikTok is so influential, especially for young people with so much bias against America, there's so many reports and studies that have come out about the negative effects of TikTok and what they've strategically done, where China is such a far-thinking country. They're thinking so many steps ahead, where they're often playing checkers, and especially under President Biden, it's felt like we were playing checkers and they were playing chess. They were thinking so many moves ahead. And TikTok is not something that was done to benefit Americans and help us be better. So the idea that we have people arguing to defend TikTok seems unusual. But Kellyanne Conway was somebody who was loyal to Trump. And so if anybody's going to have his ear, she might have the ability to have a little say into it. So this is unknown ground for me, but we'll certainly watch it closely.
179 people were killed Sunday morning in South Korea when a passenger plane carrying 181 people overran the runway and crashed into a concrete barrier. The Jeju Airlines plane touched down without any of its landing gear before plowing into a concrete barrier and catching fire. The flight was returning from Thailand to an airport about 180 miles south of Seoul. 2 crew members, a man and a woman, survived. Officials in Azerbaijan are demanding Russia admit guilt in the Azerbaijan Airlines plane crash on December 25th that killed 38 people. The plane was attempting to land in Grozny, Chechnya, when the country's transport minister said some kind of external interference damaged the plane. Survivors reported hearing multiple explosions, and experts suspect the plane was struck by shrapnel from Russian air defense missiles, possibly following GPS interference. Despite severe damage, the pilot managed to save 29 passengers. Russia's aviation agency attributed the situation to a complicated environment, citing Ukrainian drone attacks, closed skies, and dense fog over Grozny. Azerbaijan has avoided formally accusing Russia, but expects an acknowledgement or apology, as in similar incident involving a Russia helicopter in 2020. Now, sources say that Putin apologized to his Azerbaijani counterpart on Saturday for what he called a tragic incident, but stopped short of acknowledging that Moscow was responsible. Mike?
Tim, the world's largest Navy now includes the world's largest assault ship. China has unveiled the Sichuan, a supersized amphibious assault ship. Townhall.com reports this underscores the communist power's relentless military expansion and aggressive ambitions internationally. These high-tech warships demonstrate China's intent to assert dominance in contested waters and has its neighbors alarmed. The Sichuan amphibious assault ship is designed to launch ground troops in land crafts and provide them with air support. Defense News reports China's People's Liberation Army Navy has been modernizing its forces for nearly a decade to operate globally and has also been working on a nuclear power aircraft carrier to deploy vessels in faraway waters without needing a base to refuel. Elon Musk took aim at some anti-immigration Republicans, calling them contemptible fools who were hateful, unrepentant racists who could cause the downfall of the Republican Party if not removed. At least 14 conservative accounts who criticized Musk's pro-legal immigration views said X revoked their blue checkmark, a verification badge given to premium account holders. It's according to NBC News. The controversy is over H-1B legal immigrants Musk supports and says the U.S. high-tech sector needs. Last year, he told the followers this: "We should greatly increase legal immigration of anyone who is hardworking, honest, and loves America. But massive illegal immigration of people we know nothing about is insane." President-elect Trump seems to agree with Elon Musk in support of H-1B visas for skilled workers in the U.S. as conservatives wrestle over immigration, telling the New York Post this: "I've always liked the visas. I have always been in favor of the visas. That's why we have them," he concluded. "I've been a believer in H-1B. I have used it many times. It's a great program."